Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I wanted to talk about why I don't really recommend buying Funko Pops, statues, or toys as investments. And we'll get into some other alternatives for sure that you could buy. But I did break it down into 3 reasons why I don't think you should sort of buy Funko Pop statues or toys. But a couple caveats first. I think it's really cool if, you buy a couple Funko Pops of your favorite superheroes or a couple statues for like some decor or something like that. But I think, once you start spending, $100, $200 or even more on some of these statues and Funko Pops that are sort of limited, I think your money's kind of better spent on, sort of like a big first appearance, nice looking key issue kind of thing. Another caveat too for talking about toys and statues. I'm sort of thinking like modern superhero toys and statues here. Like I think, maybe some, toys from 1940s or something are pretty good investments, or a statue from like the 1700s is a good investment maybe, but just want to stick to kind of the superhero collectible markets here that we'll talk about. So I did boil it down into 3 reasons, as I said, and certainly this is my opinion. So if you had, maybe you've done well on like a value of a Funko Pop or something, like let me know in the comments below for sure. But the 3 reasons why I wouldn't really recommend getting into Funko Pops, statues, or toys with that sort of thinking that they're investments and they're going to really increase in value over time. So the first reason here is there's no real like intrinsic characteristic, I think, to like a Funko Pop or a statue that's going to have it possibly increase in value over time. Whereas, like Amazing Fantasy 15, like first appearance of Spider-Man in like pop culture comic books. And now look how big Spider-Man has become, like millions of kids just loving Spider-Man and adults too. So that first appearance of Spider-Man, there's like an intrinsic value to that first appearance because Spider-Man's become such a huge thing. And I've said in the past, especially like an Amazing Fantasy 15 or like an Incredible Hulk 181, like those books will almost become like the Mona Lisa in like 200 years. Like they're just going to be so well collected over the very, very long term, I think. Whereas a Funko Pop or a statue or a toy, I'm not too sure there's too much of an intrinsic value like that, where at like, the comic books, where it is like really the first appearance in pop culture, like right from Stan Lee's mind onto Amazing Fantasy 15 was Spider-Man, and that was the first time, so that's always going to be special. And you can do that for any hero, like an Amazing Spider-Man 300 for, first full appearance of Venom. Kind of same type of value, I think, for that book, and the same argument you can make that they do have more value than a sort of Funko Pop or a statue. So that's the first reason why I don't really think, Funko Pop statues or toys are really investable. The second reason is, the limited numbers on these Funko Pops and statues. Like, yeah, on the surface, that's kind of cool. Like maybe there's only 75 of these Funko Pops ever made or whatever it might be. But, like the manufacturer's just deciding to limit the production at 75 and then they jack up the prices because it's limited. So for me, that's not compelling enough to, fork out a lot of the money that some of these like, really collectible, limited Funko Pops and statues are going for. Whereas I think, in a CGC 9.8, for example, you get a limited number, and I've sort of on the record as saying I really love that you get a CGC 9.8 and it's like the highest graded comic, and it's usually like a 1 of 200 or a 1 of 300, and that's a really good feeling. But that sort of happens naturally through the comic book market, and the reason it's a 1 of a 300 or something is because it was impeccably taken care of, and it's a CGC 9.8, so that's kind of special, on top of the intrinsic value of the first appearances and things like that, like the big key issues and the first appearances in pop culture. Whereas, the Funko Pops, it's just like some company decided to limit the production and now it's special, and oh yeah, we jacked up the prices too. Like, I'm just not convinced, basically. And so that's the second reason. The third reason here is I think there's a chance that maybe, especially Funko Pops too, they could kind of become a fad. I just think, there was like the Beanie Babies, and I know there's maybe like the original Beanie Babies are kind of well collected, but like pretty much all the other ones are like sold at a garage sale for like $1 or something. So, I think there's a chance that these Funko Pops can kind of become a bit of a fad and just won't really retain their value. Certainly not as well as like an Amazing Fantasy 15 or a Hulk 181 or Amazing Spider-Man 300, which they have a clear history of a trend upwards in value. So, you know, it's really hard to say anything about the like long-term value of a Funko Pop or something like that. I think like with statues too, you know, I was like, they're quite bulky and they're hard to store kind of thing. So, you know, with statues, I just find that even though, you know, some might be really cool and limited, like, you know, maybe say you collect statues, you buy 5 and, you know, you have them everywhere around your apartment, but then you maybe grow out of that. And now, you know, maybe you meet a girl that doesn't like superheroes or something. You got to get rid of all your statues right away because you can't just store them in a couple boxes in your closet or whatever it might be. So, yeah, I think statues, they're just, you know, they're kind of bulky and all the other arguments we kind of made, but I just don't think they're the best investments either. And toys, yeah, superhero toys, I'm just never impressed at all with like the market for them. Like I you know, when I first got into 9.8s, I was kind of dabbling, looking at the toy market as well. And just things like never seemed to sell. You know, cool things that you'd think might be cool collectibles were like $10, $15. Like the prices never sort of advance with toys. And I'm again talking sort of modern superhero toys. And you know, no real intrinsic characteristic to a toy. Like it's not, most of them are not like the first appearance of that character or whatever it might be. So yeah, and I've never really noticed the toy market really thriving compared to like the CGC 9.8 comic book market. Even back then it just seemed like there were definitely way more collectors that recognized the value in CGC 9.8 comic books rather than toys. So yeah, you know what? They just the three there, the Funko Pop, statues, and toys, they just don't really make sense for me. Past sort of like, you know, you buy a couple because you love the superhero. Like a Funko Pop, that's not a limited thing. I think it's like $15 or something. So yeah, like say your favorite hero is Batman or Wolverine, you buy a Batman and Wolverine Funko Pop and, you know, you have those. Like that's kind of cool. But anything beyond that where you're collecting them and you have an expectation of like, these are going to be really good investments, I'm not too sure about that. And I could be wrong, like certainly could definitely be wrong. So yeah, I mentioned in the title too, like what else should you invest in then? So clearly the number one thing I think is CGC 9.8 comic books basically. Yeah, like even your sort of average key here for me, like these 9.8 books I bought, you know, a year or two ago, both of them, or one I actually had graded, bought raw, but you know, just you know, it was kind of a brainless buy for me. Like, you know, I was just like, I love McFarlane, I love Venom. This one's not even a real first appearance, so it doesn't even really have like that intrinsic first appearance value, but still probably the first cool Venom cover by Todd McFarlane. So yeah, I mean, I bought mine, they were about $265, I think mine was, and now some of these in auctions are going for $400, and it's like a year later. And I know the market, you know, the market's pretty hot right now, and the McFarlane books are hot, but yeah, so like a CGC 9.8 special key issue, whatever it might be, I think those are always going to be a better investment than, you know, certainly Pops, statues, or toys. Another thing too to consider, because I just recently picked up a first printing of the Batman The Dark Knight Returns in the hardcover. So this is kind of the first printing graphic novel of Batman The Dark Knight Returns. So see, you get the, you know, the whole graphic novel in there, the whole, you know, 4 series of comics. Yeah, just a really cool, you know, if you're a big Batman fan and a big Batman The Dark Knight Returns fan, this one, it was, like they said, it was unread in impeccable condition. I got it for $75 American. And it is really, like, I kind of have it in the plastic here, but I took it out of the plastic. It is impeccable, like looks absolutely untouched. So this is the first printing hardcover of Batman The Dark Knight Returns. There are the numbered hardcover versions of Batman The Dark Knight Returns. If you're even more serious, those ones, they're numbered. I believe it's numbered to 2000. Yeah, I'm forgetting that probably, but they are limited numbered, and those, I believe they're mostly over $500 if they're looking in really good shape. So there's a big market for those. But this one, if you're just, yeah, this is kind of one to recommend. And Omnibuses are, you know, something that I think you could consider sort of from an investment perspective, but only really selectively. This is sort of one that I would sort of recommend, kind of like, you know, it's the special first print hardcover edition of Batman The Dark Knight Returns. So kind of, you know, it's a pretty special, and I wouldn't even call it an omnibus, but like another one that kind of comes to mind that maybe you could think of as an investment is the McFarlane Spidey omnibus run. That has become really collected, and yeah, you could just read all the McFarlane books from his Amazing Spider-Man run in one book kind of thing. That kind of seems to have increased in price, and I've heard a lot of people talking about how that's increased in price. So yeah, the alternatives to you know, Funko Pops, statues, and toys for me are certainly, you know, CGC 9.8 comic books if you can afford them after the 1980s. I think, you know, it does make sense to kind of stick to CGC 9.8 comic books in that era if you're coming at it from an investment perspective. And then maybe some other options are, you know, these like, you know, maybe graphic novels, like some of the first print graphic novels, and maybe some of those really iconic omnibuses. But yeah, those kind of have some of that intrinsic value, whereas, you know, it's a first appearance of a hero in pop culture, like, you know, Amazing Spider-Man 300, first full appearance of Venom, and, you know, amazing Todd McFarlane cover that's been homaged a million times. Like, that's an intrinsic characteristic of that book that will probably make it continue to climb in value slowly but steadily. Whereas a Funko Pop, you know, is there a first appearance intrinsic characteristic to it? Not really. Even some of the limited ones, like these manufacturers have just limited the thing and then jacked up the prices, limited the production, jacked up the prices. So I'm not really convinced on any of that. And it's just, you know, when you're spending $200, $300 on a limited statue or a Funko Pop, I think your money's way better well served buying a CGC 9.8 or, yeah, maybe some of these iconic graphic novels. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to kind of hash out this point on camera because occasionally I do speak to some people on the team who, you know, might really be into Funko Pops and spending quite a bit of money on them, and I'm not sure if the, you know, just my opinion, I'm not sure if the values are going to really like steadily increase over time, and that's going to be a sustainable thing, and yeah, for kind of all the reasons we mentioned for sure. All right, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, I would invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Hit the bell for all the latest video notifications, and add me on Instagram and Twitter as well. Yeah, lots of great conversations in the past few days on Instagram. Just, yeah, the last few videos kind of got a lot of ideas out there, and yeah, some you know, great conversations I'm having on Instagram for sure. And I had just got a mail call in of a new CGC 9.8, and I think that's going to be an unbox tomorrow. So excited for it. Oh yeah, it's looking so good, and I almost want to like take an Instagram picture and post it on Instagram really quick, even before I do an unbox video, because I'm so excited for yeah, the new kind of my newest CGC 9.8. So that'll be an unbox video, maybe tomorrow. Okay, thanks again so much for supporting the channel here and watching and subscribing. Yeah, it means so much. Yeah, and good to kind of hash out my thoughts on the Funko Pops and the statues and the toys. All right, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.